Good morning, dear ones. How wonderful to be back with you. It's been 7 or 8 years. It's been a long time. Jerry and I were at Pismo Beach, and we woke up on a Sunday morning and said, well, what are we going to do? Well, of course we're going to come to Awakening Ways. So we got to come and visit with many of you. And so it's so wonderful to be back. Reverend Elizabeth, thank you so much for the invitation and the opportunity. I appreciate it very much. So greetings to all of you. Great music, by the way, guys. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much. Remember that from last time. Just amazing music here. So good morning to all of you in this very room, and good morning and good afternoon to all of you that are joining us thanks to the joys and wonders of Zoom and the internet. It's a great pleasure to be with you. So Jerry, my first husband was Jerry also. We found this teaching, it pains me to say this, 30 years ago. Oy vey. 30 years ago, and I was so excited because now my life is going to work. Everything's going to be wonderful, right? Our relationship is going to be great. We're going to have enough money. We're going to have enough peace. We're going to have enough everything. And if you remember when the first time you walked through this door or another door, things do start to change. And we learn the truth of us, and we learn that if we, and you might have heard this somewhere before, if we change our thinking, we really can change our lives. And so things started to get better, and life got better, and we had 33 amazing years together. What didn't change, though, was the fact that people don't always do what we want them to do. Have you found, has that been your experience? That's been my experience. If they just would, if you would just do what I want you to do, your life would be so much better, and God knows mine would. Alas, that is not always the case. People don't always follow our rules. I have rules about being on time. If you weren't this morning, please know that this is nothing personal, and I'm not speaking to you. It's just my thing. I'm here 20 minutes early, half an hour early, 45 minutes early, because that was my father's rule, and you just do that. You sit in the parking lot and listen to the radio back or the whatever, and wait rather than being 5 minutes late. I am convinced that the universe has a sense of humor because the beloveds in my life do not necessarily have that rule. My Jerry, we gotta go. Yes, dear. It's time, we really gotta go. Yes, dear. We never miss, because I get to the airport an hour and a half to 2 hours early, and I'm sitting and having my Starbucks and reading my book or whatever and waiting because, again, you want to be there early. We never missed a plane, but his was 15 to 20 minutes early, not an hour to an hour and a half early. I know that the universe has a sense of humor because I have an amazingly wonderful new relationship. And thank you, just, oh my, he is adorable and wonderful, also a nurse, so I don't know why I keep falling in love with nurses, but I do. But not only does he have no such rule about being on time, I'll be there at 10 o'clock-ish. So it's been over 3 years, and so I'm learning more and more about the ish. When we first started, I'll be there at this time, and he's 20 minutes late. He's half an hour late. What does this mean? What does this mean? Does it mean you don't care about me? Does it mean that you're immature? Does it mean that you're irresponsible? Does it mean all those things that my father said it meant if you're late? Or does it mean that he got there at 20 after? That's all it means. But so often we assign the meaning, we assign the energy, we assign the upheaval and heartbreak and all the rest of that, when what it means is he was there at 20 after. That's all it means. So we talk a lot about forgiveness, but so often we talk about forgiveness as a magic wand kind of thing. So, and if you've gone to, well, let's see, what's the closest Costco? Santa Maria? San Luis? Is there one in San Luis Obispo? Okay. So, and I pick on Costco because it is, if you go, you know that there are so many life lessons to be had. Not just the free samples, but just, the interaction with people and everything else. And so if you're there and somebody's parked crossways in the entrance because they just can't find their membership card and it delays you an extra 45 seconds, that's easily forgivable. But there are some other things, and quite possibly things that we brought with us this morning that we label as not quite so forgivable. But we're taught, just, like the shoe company, just do it. We'll just wave the magic wand and forgive them. But I can't always do that. I can't always do that. And if I don't allow myself to feel the feelings and process through the experience of forgiveness, then I can sometimes feel guilty. Well, I should have forgiven that, but I just can't. I feel guilty, I feel shame, because I should have been able to forgive that, and I just can't. So we're going to talk about all of that and a bunch more this morning. There's a Zen proverb that reminds us, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. So we're still doing what we were doing before. It's just that it's a little less heavy. And ideally, we're sooner and sooner in the process stopping to say, well, why does this bother me so much? And how can I change my story about this into something that feels better? We want our dear ones, our spouses, partners, children, grandchildren, parents, whoever you have in your life, we want them to be happy and healthy. We want them to make good choices and have wonderful lives. One of my favorite authors, Edwin Gaines, says, God doesn't have grandchildren. So, which is really an interesting point. So my relationship with life is my relationship with life, and their relationship with life is their relationship with life. So as much as we want them, and again, if you would just do what I want you to do, your life would be so much better, but it's their life to do with what they choose, not ours. In my introduction, Reverend Elizabeth referred to the other workshop that I do about allowing ourselves to feel grief and loss, and I had a great deal of conflict because, very quickly, many of you know, Jerry died in the airport in Houston on the way home from an Anton conference, and so I came home and left his body in Houston to be cremated and so forth. And so I came home the following day with 4 suitcases, his 2 and my 2. Came home to an empty house. The dog was with a dog sitter. Sat down, started to grieve, and my ego said, "No, everything is in divine order. It's all good. Everything is as it should be." And so I really felt some conflict because my humanness said, my heart is breaking, but my spiritual side said all that, which is absolutely the truth, but the fact may be completely different for us. So it's so important in this thing called life that we allow ourselves to feel what we feel, and that's what we're talking about. That's what we're going to talk about today. So what can we do? What can we do when life isn't exactly what we had in mind? When our dear ones that we thought were going to do this or that or not do this or that turned out to do the opposite? And what do we do on those days when we look back and say, why did I do that? Why did I say that? because, of course, in forgiveness, as important as it is to forgive others, we also have to include ourselves on the list as well, because I don't know about you, but there are a few messes out there that I've made, and there's the opportunity to forgive those as well. So what can we do when this happens? We can forgive. One of my favorite books, Forgiveness and Other Acts of Love by Stephanie Dowrick, she writes, "You may not recognize forgiveness even when you have experienced it, for what we are seeking to know better is subtle, difficult to define, multi-layered, and contains an element of magic. You will, however, feel it in your body. Something, very nearly a thing, has left you. You are no longer carrying the load you were. You have put it down. Anger may have given way to sorrow or regret. Rage may have flattened out into indifference or pity, but into what seemed black and white has crept a little gray." If you've ever had this experience, and I'm going to share my experience, oh my dear God, experience of forgiveness, but you got to come to the workshop this afternoon to hear it. You see, there's just a little motivation there. If you absolutely can't come this afternoon, see me afterwards, and I'll give you a taste. But if you've ever had that experience of carrying whatever it was for months or years or decades or centuries, and then the still small voice finally gets a word in edgewise and says, "Well, you know, ... Forgiveness, once we're done, is the most amazing thing. But again, how important it is for us to allow ourselves to feel what we feel and process it through and get to that ending point. The magic wand just doesn't work. That's how so many of us were taught. And okay, I just forgive it, but then down the road, a week or a month, you think of that person and there it is again. Or you hear something or see something or smell something or taste something that reminds you of whatever it was that happened, and there you have that tightness in the pit of your stomach again. We're not done yet. That's what that means. We're not done yet. Sometimes it's my story and my assumptions. So Jerry died in October of 2018, and we did a memorial service in, I think it was December. It was amazing. He was a nurse. He was a nurse who didn't take care of himself. I really have forgiven this. I have forgiven this, haven't I? Let's check that. But he was a nurse at Kaiser and then at UCSD, and so knew many people and had many friends and was amazing and wonderful. And a few of you knew him, and he was amazing and wonderful. And so we had about 150 people at the memorial service, and as you do, we had the sign-in book, and so I'm home afterwards, exhausted, recovering, remembering, just it was so wonderful. And I'm going through the guest book and, well, but he wasn't there. Well, he wasn't there. And so not him, but people that I would have expected, people that I love and love me, I would have expected to attend the service, and they didn't attend. Well, what does this mean? They don't love me, they don't care about me, or this relationship that we had for all this time meant nothing, or was the reason that they didn't attend that they didn't attend? Because we never know. We never know. It's always our story. It's always our story, and we get to decide what warms our hearts and makes us feel better. Remember, the teachings of Abraham say, and it's true, we're always looking for a thought that feels better. So yes, I can assume this and carry this imagined hurt with me, or I can forgive them and look for a thought that feels better. We can allow I love this word, spaciousness. So my judgment and my assumptions and what I can see, but if I allow some spaciousness into that, I can see, there are more possibilities to this. So I'd like to share some ideas on what forgiveness is and what forgiveness is not. Starting with, as we've talked about, it is a process, not an event. Again, sometimes I can deal with the person at Costco. I can deal with the person in the left lane on 101 when I'm just trying to get someplace and they're talking on their cell phone doing 55. I can do that pretty easily, but there's other stuff we assign levels of difficulty. Boy, this is going to take me a long time to forgive. Forgiveness is lovingly releasing all the shoulds. Now, if there was a way that we could, if we could take one word out of the dictionary and send it into space, that would be should. Because if I'm shoulding on myself, that means I'm telling myself I should do something that I don't want to do, or I shouldn't. That means I shouldn't be doing something that I wanted to do. I should go to the gym this afternoon. I should go to church. Well, you should go to church. See, that's the of course. That's the exception to the rule. But the rest of those, don't you find that if I'm shoulding on myself, that's something, or they should really do that? Well, maybe not, because it's their choice so often, not mine. A wise person, not me, once said, forgiveness is when you stop wishing for a better yesterday. I love the concept of that. Forgiveness is the conscious questioning of, is this mine to forgive? I did a workshop a year or so ago about forgiveness, and and this woman in the crowd talked about, or in the group, talked about this person that abused one of the members of her family, and she just absolutely could not see him, could not spend time with him, could not deal with him because it was so awful, and she was having such a terrible time dealing with him. And someone else in the room said, well, is that yours to forgive? It's an interesting question. Is that mine? Is that mine to forgive? Forgiveness includes ourselves for our part in whatever it was. So somehow, some way, we were somehow involved in whatever that was that happened, and so there's the opportunity to forgive ourselves as well as anybody else. I would say that forgiveness comes very often after the 5 stages of grief, and you remember those from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the denial, the acceptance as the last step, and then I would add forgiveness after that. And again, as a process. True forgiveness is not taking the easy way out. Well, I don't want to deal with this anymore, so I'll just forgive it. But again, then something happens and you see them. Or you feel, or you have that memory of that experience, and there's the opportunity to keep going. Forgiveness is not an act of martyrdom. I am such a great person, so I am going to go ahead and forgive you. Guess what? They don't care. They don't care. They may not be here anymore. Quite possibly, they're not even on this plane anymore, and so it's totally and completely a selfish, wonderful act. There's that word. Do we allow ourselves to be selfish? This is just for me. This pint of Talenti gelato, because it doesn't keep after you open it, so this is just for me. And that's okay. That experience of forgiveness, that work that I'm doing on this is just for me. And that not only is that okay, but it's necessary. Forgiveness is not condoning or letting someone off the hook. It is recognizing what happened and processing it through. And by the way, and we'll talk about this afternoon, forgiving is not forgetting. You know, you've heard that expression before probably, and sometimes we can't, and very often we shouldn't, because included in that experience is something valuable for us, a lesson or an experience or a truth that we needed to learn, or this had to happen so this could happen. You ever had one of those? Wow. So we can forgive that and even go the step further that maybe we don't need to forgive it, because that had to happen so that could happen. Do we allow ourselves to forgive people who die? See, I use the D word. We don't do that. We in this culture are not trained on how to deal with someone's death. We don't use the D word. We say they made their transition. They've gone on to their next experience. The teachings of Abraham say they croaked. You know, which is a little not quite so. Boy, that's kind of the other end of the spectrum. I know, right? But whatever works for you. When I do a memorial service, I always encourage the dear ones to forgive them for what happened in life, but also forgive them for dying, especially if we judge that it wasn't time for them to go yet. My Jerry was 53. It wasn't time for him to go yet, except that it was. It absolutely was, because God doesn't have grandchildren, and so it was his time because that was his path. Do we allow ourselves to forgive when people die? An interesting question. So I hope you'll have the opportunity to be with me this afternoon. We're going to do a much deeper dive into this. We'll do a personal inventory of the people in our lives that we have forgiven, that we think we'd like to forgive, and we'll even look at the people that there's no way in this life or the next one I'm going to forgive them. You may have people on your list, yeah, and we'll look a little at that. So why does it matter? We can carry this with us. We can schlep it with us. But one of my favorite authors, Debbie Ford, wrote, "What we can't be with won't let us be." So if we can be with this experience, if we can change our story as we're able, if we can change our assumptions into something that feels better, we can move forward. For ourselves, because you might have heard this, it's done unto us as we believe. So if we still have a need for self-forgiveness, and we're holding something against ourselves, we're not going to live the wonderful, full lives that we're entitled to. Our spiritual mind treatment, our affirmative prayers aren't going to manifest for us if we don't believe we deserve them. So it's so important for us to recognize that as I'm forgiving you, I also need to forgive myself. So how do we know when we're done? Do the heavens open and the angels sing and trumpets and all the rest of that? Perhaps. And if they do, I'd love to talk with you afterwards, because that's not been my experience. Mary Morrissey says, the way that you know is that that person can walk down the streets of your mind and not be attacked. So I can think about you. I can think about that experience, and it's okay, and they cannot be attacked. And again, whether they're still here or not, whether it's us, whether it's somebody else, doesn't matter. Okay, so 12 o'clock at the Awakening Ways office, 7350 El Camino Real. Yes. I have a crazy memory for numbers. So I hope that you'll take the time and come and be with me, because you got to hear the rest of my story. So with that in mind, join me in the light for just a minute. So staying in this consciousness of oneness, we offer great gratitude for the opportunity to be together in this most amazingly beautiful place this morning. We offer gratitude for this beloved spiritual community and the wonderful people who are here. We offer gratitude for the opportunity to think about the possibility that maybe we could forgive. And as we move forward today and this week, we are open. We're open to that possibility, to see what we're still carrying with us and decide if it's time, because whenever we're ready, the love and the passion and the wonder that is the truth of our being, that is spirit, that is the beloved, which is what we are, always says yes. So I can let this go. I can give myself this most wonderful holiday gift, and I can let this go. For the opportunity to be together, for this community, we give great thanks. And together we say, and so it is. Thanks, everybody.